want to understand how in a real nuclear reactor, right, the materials change their properties under the action of this extreme harsh environment of the radiation. It's a new phenomenon which we recently discovered. Using these laser-based techniques, we can actually make a prediction. The better and more beautiful relation I have with my close relatives, with my close friends, that affects in a positive way doing science.
Many countries are turning to nuclear power. In a world facing a climate crisis, it remains one of the few sources capable of delivering clean and steady energy. Kazakhstan is among them. In the coming years, several nuclear power plants are expected to be built across the country. The most important challenge in this process is to ensure safety. Inside a nuclear reactor, the fuels and structural materials are continuously exposed to extreme heat and powerful radiation. Their strength and resilience are what the entire nuclear reactor system depends on. Kazakhstani scientist Zhandos Utegulov uses advanced laser technologies to study how materials behave under extreme radiation. With micron-level precision, his research team pinpoints exactly where structural damage accumulates in nuclear materials and what can be changed to make reactor components stronger. His work paves the way for a new generation of nuclear systems, safer, more durable, and more efficient.
How can you understand the radiation problem? One way is, of course, to measure structure, right? Simply how structure is getting affected by these externally impinging ions. You introduce radiation damage, obviously, right? But the more damage you introduce, the material becomes weaker in a sense, right? In a conventional sense, it becomes mechanically weaker, and thermally, it becomes more thermally insulative. We want to understand how in a real nuclear reactor, right, the materials change their properties under the action of this extreme harsh environment of the radiation. Okay, and one of the part of that radiation is coming actually from so-called swift heavy ions, and we can call them fission products, right? And so the fission products, they are really processes which take place during the nuclear reaction in the reactor. However, to emulate, to understand, to mimic the effect of the radiation from fission product, we use swift heavy ions, right, derived from high energy accelerators. And typically, the high energy accelerators, is a facility here in Astana, which we use to irradiate our samples at different doses, for instance, at different ion dosages. And then we take these samples and we interrogate their thermal transport properties as well as mechanical properties.
One of the laser-based techniques Professor Zhandos Utegulov works with is based on a phenomenon known to science for more than a century. It was discovered almost at the same time by French physicist Léon Brillouin and Soviet scientist Leonid Mandelstam. They found that inside any solid material there are constant, barely noticeable vibrations, tiny sound waves pulsing through it. When light passes through the material, it interacts with these waves and changes slightly. These changes are too small to see, but they reveal how strong and elastic the material still is. With the invention of powerful lasers, this effect became a tool for high-precision diagnostics of materials. Today, Brillouin light scattering spectroscopy coupled with optical microscopy enables scientists to look deep inside materials without damaging them to see how far radiation has penetrated and how the strength of the material changes with depth.
The next step is we direct this collected light, right? You cannot see it here, you can only see with your eyes, you can see the incident light. However, the scattered light has very small intensity. The brilliant scattered light has very small intensity, and therefore you cannot see it. However, we collected at the right angle, we collected and sent it to this spectrometer. So this black box actually is what we call tandem Fabry-Perot interferometer. And this tandem Fabry-Perot, it works as a dispersive element, spectral element, which enables us to scan actually the mirrors of this Fabry-Perot ettalon cavity, and this way, by scanning in real time, by scanning these mirrors, we can actually in real time detect various frequency ranges, right, near the elastically scattered light. Elastically scattered light, often called a Rayleigh light. But brilliant scattered light is some frequency, in this particular case, few gigahertz away to the right and away to the left from the incident and from the incident and as well as elastically scattered light. When we direct the light, the scattered light into here, so there is actually a microscope here, okay? But after that, we send it towards this spectrometer, right? So the detection of the inelastically scattered light is a spectral, right? So what you can see here, you can clearly see in real time the accumulation of data. So essentially, the central part is a Rayleigh peak. Rayleigh peak is kind of similar to what you see in the blue sky, right? It's basically elastically scattered light, okay? However, the peaks on the right and on the left, that's a brilliant shifted peak. And they are typically several gigahertz. Gigahertz frequency acoustic waves. When it comes to nuclear energy applications, for instance, we look at we look and measure elastic properties of these materials as a function of, let's say, radiation dosage or as a function of depth inside the material. Now, what you see on the screen here is a position of the two peaks, right? Well, the one is called Stokes, the other is called anti-Stokes peak. It's essentially, one is associated with the creation of an acoustic phonon, the other is associated with the annihilation of those phonons. But the most important feature here is the position of this peak. The position of this peak tells us how fast actually acoustic wave propagates inside the sample, right? And of course, the acoustic wave velocity can change depending on the irradiation condition which we put on that sample, right? From the let's say swift heavy ions, for instance, right? And by changing radiation dosage or going deeper inside material, right, we can see the variation of the position of this peak, right? Now, in addition to position of this peak, we can also see how high this peak is. The height of this peak tells us how intense the brilliant scattered light is. The higher the peak, the more photoelastic response here. So in other words, in addition to elastic properties, we can also assess photoelastic properties of these materials as a function of depth, as a function of fluids.
The frequency of the acoustic peaks show how quickly sound waves move through the material, and that tells how stiff or elastic it is. The brightness of the scattered light reveals how sensitive the material is to stress or deformation. This data is essential for designing materials that can safely withstand the harsh radiation inside a nuclear reactor.
One of the biggest problems was how to effectively remove the heat and also to understand these heat propagation problems. So ion radiation creates lots of defects, various types of defects inside of the material, especially in a fuel lifetime. So therefore, to effectively quantify what are these defects and how they affect to the phonon transport, the thermal transport, especially in the nanoscale, will actually help to improve the understanding, first of all, and based on this understanding to develop new fuel materials, ceramics, that will have less deterioration in terms of the thermal properties and plus mechanical properties. So therefore, our goal is to improve our characterization abilities to effectively find out what are the key mechanisms that impact to this degradation of thermal properties. We believe that our research will highly contribute to the not only through the fundamental science but also in terms of the application. Kazakhstan is moving towards the clean energy, to the using the also high power electronics. Therefore, again, the understanding the mechanisms in these semiconductors, in these new materials, will impact a lot, I think, to these applications. So therefore, like, we are aiming both fundamental science and plus future application of this research.
Zhandos Utegulov was born in Almaty in a family of university professors. At home, science was a part of everyday life. Ideas were shared, discoveries discussed. From an early age, he was drawn to physics, a field that's precise and logical, yet full of mystery. He could spend hours taking apart radio components, building things from whatever he had at hand, and reading popular science magazines with curiosity. Zhandos received his undergraduate education in Kazakhstan and later continued his studies and research in the United States. His work demands precision, patience, and attention to detail. He finds inspiration in quiet walks, moments of stillness, and conversations with those closest to him.
The better I am at my work, at my science, at my research, the better I have a relation with my family. That's what I noticed. The more successful I am in my work, the better relation I have with my wife, with my children, with my parents, of course, with my relatives, with my friends, And on the other hand, the better and more beautiful relation I have with my close relatives, with my close friends, that affects in a positive way of doing science also. So therefore, these are two mutually reciprocal relations, I would say, which are very important. I believe social life is also very important to do great science. Without social life, it's like we are robots, and I don't think it's fun. Perfect weekend. I would say to have a nice conversation, with my family members, with my friends, even with my colleagues, about science and about general life, how we can, contribute mutually, right? To tell about science to my friends, for instance, or my family members who don't know about those things we discovered in our lab, but at the same time to listen very carefully about their everyday needs, and everyday activities, and find this dialogue. So that's why I'm saying that science should not be just constrained only from Monday to Friday. Even during weekend, we can talk about science. Maybe not in the lab, but maybe in picnics, that's okay. And trying to kind of broaden the perspective where how can science can explain maybe something fundamental in our nature, right? Where the limits are, how other areas of human endeavor other than science can also help, maybe from medicine, from social life, right? From engineering, from industry, from government.
Zhandos Utegulov believes there are three things scientists need to succeed. First is motivation, genuine curiosity, the drive to understand, to go deeper and to ask the right questions. Second is patience. In science, results rarely come quickly. Researchers have to be ready for a long journey and learn from their mistakes along the way. And third is hard work, steady, focused effort over time. When all three come together, that's when real discoveries become possible.
If you look at the great scientists, right, in the history of science, right, they started always from something small, but they had big dreams, right? And when they had big dreams, with small steps, they could actually accomplish their big goals, right? Nothing happens overnight, right? You have to work hard. And of course, things change from the day of our independence. You know, it was time when we had to build our diplomacy, our political science, right? Our international relations. Then later, these minerals and oil and gas, right, helped us a lot to be recognized in the international arena. Nowadays, I think this science and high-tech engineering needs to be developed a lot in order for us to be recognized. In the long term, you have to develop very strong scientific infrastructure, human capital, very important, you know, and that will actually, it's like, think of it as a long-term investment, right? If you invest into your own people, into the brains of your own people, you know, 20, 30 years from now, you will absolutely, you will see the results, okay? And they will start developing new product, new technologies, and selling them. And if you look at the countries around Kazakhstan, you know, many countries went exactly through the same way, right? Look at China, Korea, right? Look at countries of Eastern Europe, for instance. They invested a lot into their own people, especially into the science and technology of their country. Now you see a lot of results, right?
As Kazakhstan moves forward with plans to build nuclear power plants, the focus isn't only on technology and infrastructure. There is another key question: who will operate these plants? The nuclear sector needs a new generation of specialists, engineers, physicists, and material scientists to understand how matter behaves under extreme heat and radiation. In the laboratory led by Zhandos Utegulov, researchers study how materials change after exposure to heavy ion radiation, the same process that happens inside an operating reactor. Using lasers, they measure changes in strength and thermal conductivity with micron-level precision. But this lab offers more than just research. It teaches precision, responsibility, and analytical thinking. These are the skills needed to train experts who won't just maintain nuclear plants, but will lead the industry forward, creating solutions that meet the highest safety standards.
Currently, I would say that Kazakhstan has gained a lot of momentum. You know, I would say especially for last 10-15 years. You know, it's trying to improve its science profile. It invests fair amount of funding already to development of science and technology. But there are, of course, still many things to be accomplished, right? And many things, many things to be accomplished in terms of improvement of the science management, for instance, right? I mean, some schemes of how grants are managed or how state-targeted programs are managed in Kazakhstan still need to be improved. But overall, I think as a whole, country has made a fairly good improvement of research and development over the last 10-15 years, I would say.
Zhandos Utegulov is a face of Kazakhstani science. Together with his team, he develops advanced optical techniques for precisely measuring how severe radiation affects materials. This knowledge is essential for evaluating the reliability of nuclear reactor structures for existing and next-generation nuclear power plants. His research lays a strong foundation for the development of safer, more efficient, and modern nuclear energy in Kazakhstan and beyond.